All right. Thank you everyone for being on time. It's always wonderful to be... Okay, one more minute. It's always wonderful to have everyone come in way early in time. Shows the enthusiasm in the room. Fantastic. If to be in front. In the front. In the corner over here. Yeah, ma'am is there. You also sit somewhere. Yeah, sure. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being on time and coming in. My name's Mirai Chatterjee. I'm a senior fellow at the Institute of Public Health, Bangalore. And apart from those of you in room, this is a special session, so I also warmly welcome our viewers online, as this session is being live streamed as well. And we have already received multiple emails and reminders that so many of our collaborators and colleagues who couldn't make it here are joining us online. So a warm welcome to all of you joining us on the IPH Annual Oration Series. The IPH Annual Oration Series is a highlight of the annual day celebration at the Institute of Public Health, Bengaluru. IPH, as you know, you've heard from today morning, has been working towards an equitable, integrated, decentralized, and participatory health system within a just and empowered society. And this annual event helps us mark every year as we move ahead in this journey. The annual Oration series started in 2018. And the purpose of this series is to hear from distinguished public health professionals, leaders, from different disciplines who share their journeys, experiences, and perspectives to motivate and inform all the public health professionals, policymakers, implementers, and young researchers who have gathered here today. Since its launch in 2018, the series has brought us remarkable voices from across public health, medicine, but also social justice. We have had community health stalwarts like Ravi Narayan, Adivasi leader and researcher, Dr. Seema Degowda, and last year we had the additional chief secretary, Madam Uma Madhavan, an inspirational leader for rural health work within the state system. And today, for this 9th edition, we are privileged to continue that tradition with a speaker whose life and work embodies all these values. It is my distinct honor to introduce Mirai Chatterjee. Mirai is a leader of the Self-Employed Women's Association, SEWA, a national union that has organized 3.8 million informal women workers across India to obtain work and income security, food security, and social security. As director of SEWA's social security team, she oversees healthcare, childcare, and insurance programs that reach millions of working women and their families. She also serves as chairperson of the SEWA Cooperation Federation, which unites 112 collectives of informal women workers. And she was the general secretary of SEWA, succeeding its legendary founder, Ilaben. But Mirai's influence, though, extends well beyond SEWA. She chairs WIEGO, Women in Informal Employment, Globalizing and Organizing. It's a global network connecting informal workers and policymakers worldwide. She serves on the board for the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship and has advised the National Commission for Enterprises in the Unorganized Sector. She was a commissioner on the WHO Commission on Social Determinants of Health, a member of India's high-level expert group on universal health coverage, and is a former member of India's National Advisory Council, and currently serves on 2 Lancet commissions for oral health and on reimagining healthcare in India. Her contributions have been recognized by the School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University, which conferred upon her its Global Achievement Award. Feel free to keep interrupting the session with loud applause, ma'am. Deserves it so much more. Today, she speaks on solidarity through women's collectives, the key to health. She will take us through how informal women workers organized by SEWA form collectives that drive real health action, addressing social determinants of health, and building unity and solidarity among women and their families, and this being the fundamental pathway to well-being. This is a perspective that is urgently needed and deeply grounded in lived practice, and I'm certain that it will leave us with much to reflect on and also act upon in the coming days. Please join me in warmly welcoming Mirai Chatterjee. Traditionally, for orations, we have the speaker talk and then we felicitate them. But ma'am has said that she would like to engage and interact with anyone who would like to do so. So after she speaks, we will have a short interactive session as well. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for that kind and generous introduction. I'm truly honored to be here with you, and I congratulate all the organizers for this wonderful conference. My first, but I promise you it won't be the last. I also am delighted to be here among so many fellow travelers and colleagues, people who I've worked with closely like Deva and Sundari for so many years, and others who I've worked with more recently like Prashant and Pragati and Arnab, Devaki. All of you, I look forward to our interactions as well. Also, I'm delighted to see and be part of this, what we call in Hindi, biradari, this public health biradari or tribe, and glad to see that our tribe is growing with so many young and new faces. So again, my sincere congratulations and thanks to all of you, and all good wishes on your public health journey, those of you who are starting out. As I was preparing for this oration, lecture, presentation, sharing of experiences, I see it more as a sharing and exchange of experiences and ideas with you. I reread some material on Gandhiji's views on health. His views on technology and doctors was articulated clearly to all of us in Hind Swaraj. I don't know how many of you have read it. It's a very slim 90-page pamphlet in Hindi, Gujarati, and English, written more than 100 years ago. Many of you would also know that science without humanity was one of the 7 sins that he wrote about. But recently, I read another little pamphlet of his, which I don't know how many of you know about, but I certainly didn't. It's called Key to Health. And it's a little booklet he wrote in 1906 in South Africa, then entitled Guide to Health. And he reprinted it in 1942 with a new name, Key to Health, while he was confined at the Aga Khan Palace in Pune. Gandhiji says this has been the most popular of all his writings. That was also a surprise to me. He advises, and I quote, "Anyone who observes the rules for health mentioned in this book will find that he has got in it a real key to unlock the gates leading him to health. He will not need to knock at the doors of doctors and vaidyas from day to day. While I had not read this book, as I told you, I didn't even know about it, but luckily I found it in the Sabarmati Ashram, thanks to a colleague, and Sabarmati Ashram is in Ahmedabad, where I live and work. I had not read this book, but when I joined SEWA, the Self-Employed Women's Association, but I found his message through working with women workers in the informal economy. It was only then that I understood how relevant this message is, his values and his ideas for both life and living, and especially for the poorest and most vulnerable in our country, who are women workers of the informal economy, who have shared their struggles and hopes with me for several years now. Another reason for starting with Gandhiji's ideas in this oration is that they inspired not only our health work at SEWA, but also because his values inspire all that we have done all these years, over 50 years now at SEWA. Many of you know these values, but just for our overseas friends, Satya or truth, Ahimsa, non-violence, Sarvadharm, equal respect for all faiths, and Swadeshi, which is linking primary producers and consumers, decentralized production, among other values that have been our guiding principles for all action. When in doubt, we remind ourselves of his vision for Swaraj, not only obtaining our political freedom, but also eliminating poverty, exploitation, and injustice, and putting ourselves, and especially the poorest, firmly on the path to self-reliance. And all of this, we have learned over the years, requires solidarity with all our citizens, and especially the most vulnerable who remain invisible, voices we usually do not hear. Solidarity, therefore, I have learned, is the key to health. Let me explain. SEWA was established in 1972, as you have just heard, by the legendary Ilaben Bhatt, a labor organizer and lawyer. Born into a family of freedom fighters, Ilaben was deeply influenced by Gandhiji's call to serve the poorest of Indians in rural areas. Later, she joined the Textile Labor Association, or what we call in Gujarati Majur Mahajan, a mill workers' trade union founded by Mahatma Gandhi and Ansuya Sarabhai in 1920 in Ahmedabad. Everybody knows about Gandhiji, but few of you would know about Ansuya Ben, as we call her, a remarkable woman of her times. She went to study medicine in London. She was the first woman. She decided then she joined the labor movement in the UK. She decided to go to the London School of Economics instead. And after Gandhiji returned from his first successful struggle organizing indigo farmers, as many of Indian colleagues would know, in Champaran, against exploitative colonial masters, she sort of talked him into setting up this trade union in Ahmedabad. And it was there that Ilaben says she was first exposed to the world of work of the majority of the Indian workforce, and particularly the women of our country. The first one who knocked on her door was Supabai, a head loader from the main wholesale cloth market in Ahmedabad, who approached Ilaben in the late 1960s for support in the struggle for minimum wages, and the wholesale cloth merchants just denied even knowing these women. They didn't have any registers which didn't have their names. There was no digitization in those days. Moved by the plight of Supabai and the other women who carried loads on their heads for barely a few rupees a day, Ilaben began to organize them. Organizing, as many of you would know, is the process of uniting workers, uniting hearts and minds, building their solidarity for collective action, and through their own membership-based collectives, organizations like unions, cooperatives, other self-help groups. Supabai led other women head loaders in negotiations with the cloth merchants with Ilaben's support. This first effort at organizing informal workers led to wage increases for the women and also to the creation of a tripartite board where the workers, the cloth merchants, and the labor department till today sit together, a tripartite board, And in this board, various welfare measures, including health insurance, scholarships for their children, and so on, are provided, in addition to fixing wage rates. So at SEWA, from this experience, informal women workers are organized on the basis of work and livelihood. And of course, it includes women of all castes, creeds, religions, ethnic minorities, and so on. It was registered as a union in 1972, which itself was a big struggle because there was no such union. The registrar said, "Who are your employers?" And the women said, "We don't have employers, we're self-employed." But today, as you heard, we are quite large. We are 38 lakh members and in 20 states. But very soon we realized that different strategies were needed when organizing informal women workers, most of whom, as I said, were self-employed, for their rightful place in the economy and in society. When women said they needed financial services, remember this is in the early 70s, to free them from the clutches of money lenders, and when they went to the nationalized banks, they were shooed away. Bank accounts were not open for them. So 4,000 women at that time contributed their daily wage, which was 10 rupees, and with 40,000 share capital, they decided to form their own women's cooperative bank. They were among the pioneers of the microfinance movement. Today, SEWA Bank, a cooperative bank, has over 5 lakh depositors and is based in Ahmedabad with lots of branches and a working capital of 500 crores, all from small savers, all informal women workers. Over 50 years of its existence, SEWA Bank has not only helped women to save and provided credit, but increased the whole bouquet of different financial services like pension and insurance. Following this first effort at creating solidarity through a cooperative, we realized that this is a powerful strategy to organize informal workers. As we organized women in the 1970s, we found it was very hard for them to undertake strikes. And in any case, most of them were self-employed. So to whom were they to present their needs and demands? There was no employer, as I've already said. Therefore, to increase their bargaining power in the labor market, we began to form collectives. And in Gujarat, of course, we were helped by having quite a strong cooperative movement. Many of you would have heard of Amul, IFCO, CRIPCO, and so on. And of course, in other states, perhaps the cooperative form isn't as successful and useful, but there are other forms based on cooperative principles, like farmer-producer organizations, not-for-profit companies and all, but working on cooperative principles. Today, there are more than 150 formally registered collectives within the SEWA movement and thousands of informal ones across the country, basically community-based self-help groups run by women. Now, as SEWA grew, women said they needed basic health care. The union had been formed, the bank had been formed, but they told us our bodies are our only assets. As long as we are healthy and can earn, we can feed our families and hope for a better future for our children. The need for this and the gap in even basic health care, remember I'm talking about the 70s, emerged starkly when SEWA Bank conducted a study in 1977 of women who were not repaying their loans regularly. The findings shocked us into taking action for health. Of the 500 women surveyed who weren't paying back regularly, 20 had died. 15 of them from causes related to childbirth. And among the rest of the women, sickness was the number one cause of indebtedness. Therefore, we began a maternity benefits initiative. Each member contributed some money towards a tin of ghee, and this was given to pregnant members, and they were linked with health services for safe childbirth. A small initiative that was started, but later the Gujarat government took this up as a scheme. They developed it as a scheme for landless agricultural laborers, and they implemented it for several years. I joined SEWA quite some time ago to develop a community-based women-led primary health care program with, for, and by SEWA members to address this huge gap in healthcare that had emerged from the SEWA Bank study. I studied history and science at university and planned to be a marine biologist and later a physician. Writing my senior thesis at college on healthcare in India, I realized that it was not so much a paucity of doctors, but more that they were just not where they were most needed, in our villages and low-income urban neighborhoods. I visited the path-breaking health program run by doctors Mabel and Raj Arole in Ahmednagar, in Maharashtra, and also learned about Dr. Antya's action research in Mandwa across the bay from Mumbai. I understood then that we needed to address the causes of sickness most urgently through public health action. Hence, I trained in public health and joined the team to work with informal women workers, the SEWA team. The first thing that struck me was the lack of basic scientific information about the body and about illnesses and how to stay healthy, just primary preventive information, especially given their meager resources and limited access to healthcare. My first 6 months were spent observing and learning in a sprawling neighborhood on the banks of the Sabarmati River, Shankar Bhuvan, my first SEWA sisters, and they continue to be my steadfast friends and teachers. The women in Shankar Bhuvan were all informal workers, street vendors, then scrap metal collectors, domestic workers, and some even scrubbed old tins, big oil tins, scrubbed them clean and resold them for a living. They had been organized into our union, and many had accounts in SEWA Bank. They had taken loans and they had built up their businesses. I also learned that in urban Ahmedabad at that time, people had more faith in their local healers. In our place, they are called bhuvas. And of course, this remains true till today in many parts of our country, as all of you know. I witnessed some of the bhuvas' practices at Shankar Bhuvan, some quite scientific, like the use of turmeric and herbs and so on, and others were downright harmful. When a young woman was abandoned by her husband and her baby girl was taken away from her, leading to depression, the bhuva made a fire with red chilies and made her inhale it to move the spirit that had, quote unquote, possessed her. Another young woman suffering from mental illness was locked up in a room by her family and fed scraps that were thrown at her till we convinced her family that all she needed was love and mental health care. Tuberculosis was widely prevalent, but people were afraid to get checkups and were not even aware that free treatment for tuberculosis was available. Despite our efforts, several of our sisters did not survive. When we linked up with the municipal authorities for free TB medicines, women said they didn't have the time to queue up for these medicines and go here and hither and thither to the hospital. Who would bring the income to feed their children? Who would compensate them for the loss of daily wage? I had been taught about the social, economic, and political factors influencing people's health in public health school. But here I saw these playing out in real life. Women told me, and I quote, "We would like to be clean, but our turn to bathe comes once in 3 days. Water is a problem here, and our toilet is the riverbank. We get up at dawn before our menfolk." The social determinants of health, or lack of these, like water and sanitation, could not have been more evident. I'm sure these experiences resonate with many of you in this room, and that you see that while there have been improvements in water, sanitation, toilets, social determinants of health in many states of our country, and we're proud of that, we still have a long way to go. Primary health care, and with the preventive focus, was the immediate need then, as it continues to be today as well. The COVID-19 pandemic and other outbreaks subsequently have yet again brought this home to us, and also the high cost in lives and livelihoods of not investing in primary health care, with secondary and tertiary care to back this up. Primary health care, as you all know well, includes action on the social determinants of health. Our members advised us to start by educating them about health and their bodies, what they call Know Your Body sessions, and also setting up a creche, childcare, full-day creche for their young children, so that they could work and earn, and while knowing that their children were cared for. Peace of mind, they said. We did both. A few of the women in Shankar Bhuvan then stepped forward to take health literacy classes. Of the first 10 health workers, only half knew how to read and write. Fortunately, this has also changed over one generation, and not only are their daughters and granddaughters more educated, but they also have better paid work now. But in those days, it was challenging to develop ways to support their learning through practical demonstrations, repeated training sessions, refresher sessions, and so on. It was a slow but exciting process of discovery and mutual learning. For example, when we had a session on anatomy, we were quite amused. We didn't have to say much about heart and lungs and ribs and so on, because the women said they reared goats and also ate them. And yet they had little scientific knowledge of reproductive physiology and the etiology of common diseases like TB and malaria. And of course, diarrhea and respiratory infections were an everyday occurrence in those days among children. But very little knowledge in how to prevent about dehydration and respiratory distress. I remember Suman Ben, one of my mentors, never been to school but very smart, a datan or toothbrush vendor, explained in the early 80s how she felt after one of the training sessions. She told me, "I've had 6 children, but had no idea about my body and all that happens during pregnancy. How could I if no one ever shared this knowledge with me?" She also told me, women like me have to have 4 to 6 children so that 2 to 3 survive. Again, there's significant progress in infant and child mortality in our country, although we all know there's much work to be done in several places and in several states. Suman Ben was both student and teacher to me, and soon began sharing her new knowledge with thousands of others like herself. Sharda Ben, who was the young woman who had been locked up in a room, became one of our most active health workers. She said she found the will to live once she began helping others with her new knowledge and skills as a health worker, an example of solidarity in action to support women. Along the way, we learned how to present scientific information on the human body and on diseases in a simple manner, demystifying medicine for local people, especially women. These health workers then began a program of health literacy in Shankar Bhuvan, and then slowly similar health education efforts around the city of Ahmedabad and then later rural areas. We had a growing team of enthusiastic health workers, Aisha and Lakshmi, Yasmin and Leela, all SEWA members. Interestingly, we found that our health work encouraged more informal workers to join SEWA because they found this health education and health services were quite useful. So they said, we'd like to join and we'd like to enroll as well. Thus, health action became an important part of organizing workers, building up our membership, and building their solidarity for collective action on health and other workers' issues also. When we had a core team of 50 community health workers, we decided to form a health workers cooperative. Why a cooperative, you may wonder. By 1990, SEWA had formed several cooperatives of artisans, of farmers, cleaners, domestic workers, and more. We saw how the cooperative form of organization led to strengthening of solidarity, and how when each woman had a stake in the organization as a shareholder, that means she paid her own hard-earned money and she had shares, she took out shares, she worked with commitment for its financial sustainability. It also led to greater decision-making and control, as women are democratically elected to the board every 5 years of a cooperative. In sum, we saw how these organizations became sustainable slowly, of course, in the long term, and served people in an appropriate manner. In addition, there was considerable goodwill by then on the part of the state's cooperative department, I must say, and that remains till today. But the department had never had such a request as ours. They said, "How will you ever be financially viable? What will you sell? Where will you get the revenues? How will you raise money?" We were faced with these questions from the authorities, but after 2 years of persistence and persuasion, we managed to register our cooperative in 1990. This too, like the parent organization SEWA, was the first of its kind. Today, Lok Swasthya Seva Health Cooperative is an autonomous, democratic, membership-based organization while being part of the SEWA movement. It has a board of 11 elected directors, all informal workers, and a few women like myself, who monitor the cooperative's growth and keep a close eye on its balance sheet. As a result, I'm happy to share that Lok Swasthya Health Cooperative has obtained an A grade from the Cooperative Department's audit, and they're rather strict, I must tell you, for the last 30 years now. A little anecdote also, if I may. They come to us and they ask for bribes. They say, you want an A grade? Then you give us chai pani, as we say in our language, some sort of speed money. So our strategy is to bring these auditors who are asking for bribes to the board, and there the women put them through the mill. And they say, look, you see our work, you see the finances, and if you think we still deserve a B or C, so be it. But we haven't been able to, we've persistently got an A grade as a result. So all sorts of strategies the women come up with. Soon after the cooperative was registered, a revenue-generating opportunity presented itself to us. In our discussions with women, they said the high costs of medicines, basically health expenditure, was keeping them in poverty and using up their hard-earned resources. Instead of utilizing their monies for better food, housing, and basic amenities that promote health, they were spending it more and more on medicines, about which they knew little or nothing. And because of the costs involved, they didn't take the full course of medicines either. This must be familiar to many of you. They urged us to provide them with low-cost medicines. They would pay for them, not free. So with 70,000, we only had limited share capital in those days. With 70,000 rupees working capital, we began to provide low-cost, quality-controlled generic drugs to our members. We bought the medicines from the wholesale medicine market in Ahmedabad, and with a modest markup to cover our costs, we began a small medicine counter at SEWA. We also provided information on rational drug therapy and so on, simple do's and don'ts. Within a year, to our surprise, the counter not only paid for itself, but started making a small profit. We realized how much retail chemists are making from all of us. Thus, we found a revenue model for our health cooperative just by following women's needs and health expenditure priorities. Surprisingly, soon, somehow the municipal authorities in Ahmedabad heard about this, and they came to us and said, why only in your SEWA compound? We'll give you space in the large municipal hospital in Ahmedabad. We'll give you 5 lakhs rupees seed capital, and you please start a counter there, and it should be run 24/7 by women. So we did that, all staffed by women, and we found that from one, then another municipal superintendent of another municipal hospital said, 1 minute, what about in my hospital? So we went there. So currently we're running now 3 low-cost pharmacies, and we found that from the profits of this, we were able to start up an Ayurvedic medicines production center as well, because we found that these are even cheaper, locally acceptable, and had fewer side effects, particularly, and were helpful particularly for the chronic diseases like diabetes. Each batch of our formulations is quality tested and certified by the Drug Commissioner in Gujarat State. We also now have a good manufacturing practice, GMP certificate, which has increased our orders from both the government and others. I should also add here that this experience, and of course many others like low cost, was able to inform the government's Jan Aushadhi program. And this is a recurrent theme. I'm sure many in this room also have tried many things. We heard about the newborn care, and those things are then taken up, good ideas are taken up by our government. One of the challenges we faced in taking science and basic health care to informal women workers were some of the norms and beliefs. These were both on health and also socio-cultural. When we went into the villages 40 plus years ago, women would take their babies whenever they saw us and run away, disappear into the fields nearby when we advised immunization. They had no faith in immunization, believing it to cause serious health issues. But today, in those same villages, almost all the children under 5 are immunized. No doubt, in large part, large measure, due to the increased footprint of our public health system and the efforts of our government. But I'd like to think also that I think it would be fair to say that the tireless efforts of the SEWA sisters, our health workers come educators, contributed to this as well. On another occasion, a young mother administered too much opium to her baby to keep her quiet while she harvested her wheat crop. There was no childcare in the village. When we found the child could barely breathe. We had to act fast. Her family said it was a waste of money to save the life of a baby girl. We had been active in that village for some time and had several members there. They convinced the family, and the little one was saved as we rushed her to the hospital in time. After that, we never had to convince anybody about the importance of healthcare equally for boys and girls of the village. Bringing healthcare to local people, and that too by women, in a manner that is both appropriate from people's point of view and that of science is not always easy. Tuberculosis, as several people have already mentioned, and in the break too, TB has always been a top priority of our members. They call it Raj Rog, or king of diseases. Again, perhaps because of the collective, a doctor from the World Health Organization in Geneva sought us out, and together we identified bottlenecks in the control of this Raj Rog, TB. One of these was the opportunity cost of going to a facility, getting tested, going there for medicines, and so on. And so we came up jointly with the women with the idea of setting up a diagnostic laboratory right where there was a lot of prevalence of TB, right where informal workers lived and worked. So the municipal corporation and WHO were quite enthusiastic about this, I must say, and ready to try this new approach. But the higher authorities in New Delhi, speaking of policymakers, were not convinced. It took us 2 years to convince them that this was possible. It's possible to have a lab embedded in communities. It's possible to train local women, our daughters who are educated, to look through a microscope and so on, and have the backup of a doctor to give medicines. Anyway, it happened, and we trained local SEWA women leaders, who we call Agevans in our Gujarati language, and they were trained to be DOTS workers, because in those days, the directly observed therapy short course had just started. We were struck by the commitment of the DOTS workers, who often went to the home of patients, not family members, not even their community members. They would go at the crack of dawn before they left for work, track them down when they went to their villages. Just now, Principal Health Secretary mentioned migration. So these women used to track them down and monitor them carefully till they were cured. In time, the results of these efforts began to show, and it was a proud moment for us when the municipal corporation felicitated these women for their efforts and for having the highest case detection, case holding, and cure rate, which actually surpassed even the WHO's basic standards. Defaulter rates were also very low. Later, when more resistant strains of TB developed, the DOTS workers doubled their efforts. It showed what can be achieved when we have faith in local people, particularly women, and their ability to learn and act collectively to deliver health outcomes. And also the need for decentralized healthcare, preferably embedded in communities and places where people live and work. Just take a quick sip. Another struggle ensued when we started a school for training traditional midwives, a dye school. Of course, today with institutional deliveries, in most states, dyes are hardly active, but in those days they were. We developed a dye training course which was to be supervised and managed by an experienced gynecologist, but we faced stiff opposition from the gynecologists of our city, who even threatened us with legal action. Most of the midwives or dyes were not literate and had no numeracy skills, but they had years of experience, as you can imagine, in delivering babies, and were enthusiastic to learn scientific methods and obtain new knowledge. We had the same gynecologists who opposed us take the examinations of the dyes at the end of the course. The dyes silenced the critics by their performance in the exams. All passed. Along the way, they learned to read and write, as they needed these skills to take blood pressure, weight of pregnant women, and so on. And as a result of this experience, we were able to have a dialogue with the then health commissioner of our state. And he agreed, seeing that they were trained and enthusiastic and ready to work, he agreed to provide safe delivery kits and even a small remuneration for the dyes, which was so important to them in those days. Another area of health action was our work on occupational health, which continues to be a very neglected area of public health. As we interacted with women as workers, not just as mothers, we noticed the toll taken on their bodies by back-breaking work and often with hazardous substances or processes. Back pain and eye strain were commonplace but were not considered worth investigating. We were told, so what? This is normal. This is not emergency. So why bother, basically? Tobacco and BD workers, almost always women, complained of breathlessness, loss of appetite, eye strain, and more. Women farmers said the tools they used, like sickles, caused body ache because they were not according to the women's anthropometry. Waste recyclers cut their hands on glass and metal sheets and also were exposed to toxic substances, apart from carrying huge loads on their heads. Construction workers suffered from injuries and fractures regularly, and death by falling from heights was not uncommon. Yet scientists had hardly investigated these occupational health issues of informal women workers, leave alone recommend ways based on evidence to address these. Fortunately for us, the National Institute of Occupational Health, NIOH, is located in Ahmedabad, where SEWA is headquartered, and a fruitful collaboration was initiated. We trained our health cooperative members and their daughters to be grassroots researchers. So they work together in partnership with the NIOH and ICMR Center of Excellence on Occupational Health. And even as I speak, they prepare and conduct services with the scientists using digital tools, analyzing data, and even writing up reports and policy briefs. Another partner, also fortuitously located nearby, is the National Institute of Design, whose designers helped to develop equipment to address some of the issues women were facing, like special gumboots and sunglasses for salt workers who toiled in the hot sun, and a sickle to cut sugarcane, which suited women. None of these were high-cost activities, and yet provided some support and useful information to women, and at the same time generated scientific evidence which had not been known for the first time in a neglected area of public health. One of the things that we failed to do, though, it's not all a success story or a walk in the park, is to convince the unorganized sector worker boards, welfare boards, to invest in these kinds of equipments for the workers. But in the meanwhile, we've managed to include occupational health and injuries in the insurance coverage that we offer to our members through SEWA's insurance cooperative, Vimo SEWA. Finally, in recent years, as the government has increased its footprint in public health, we've been focusing more on filling the gaps in primary health care, like occupational health, as I mentioned, and the impact of climate change, and also mental health. But further, to bridge the gap between enhanced services and entitlements actually reaching women, we developed what we call SEWA Shakti Kendras, which are basically information hubs where women can get information on health, nutrition, and so on. But importantly, they get information on the public health system and the many services and entitlements that are their due. And then they are helped by the local women leaders, Agevans, as I mentioned, to actually obtain these benefits. Whether during times of health crises or normal times, local women, frontline leaders, whom we call Agevans, serve their communities with dedication and commitment, as I'm sure you have also observed in your work. We see that they are eager to learn and with encouragement and support become not only confident health workers, but effective social change leaders. Today, most of the work of the Lok Swasthya health cooperative at the grassroots is entrusted to our Agevans, who not only provide education and services, but also act on the social determinants of health. In fact, much of their time and energy is spent on trying to get water and sanitation in their villages, roads, functioning Anganwadis, and they also link with SEWA's services like banking, insurance, and childcare. All of these experiences have led to some significant learnings about the solidarity approach to health, organizing people, fostering their unity, informing of their rights under our constitution and the laws of the land, taking information to people at the grassroots, and undertaking local action, all of which are the key to health, as we'd all agree. Let me share a few in conclusion of what I've learned in my public health journey. First, organizing, as I'm sure you've heard from me a lot by now, is the first and most basic building block. We have learned that making difference in public health is all about this first crucial step, ensuring that no one is left behind, particularly the poorest and most vulnerable, Dalits, Adivasis, religious and ethnic minorities of our country, and others who normally remain unreached. When women from these communities are engaged as Agevans and health workers, inclusion is ensured. Agevans are the pillars not only of our health work but of the entire SEWA movement. It is they who are the font of ideas, insights, and so much talent. We continue to be inspired by these hardworking and dedicated women who strive to bridge the health equity gap. Second, it's critical to invest our time and resources in taking scientific knowledge about health and well-being to the people. The continuous health challenges that we face drive this home to us time and time again. In his book, Key to Health, Gandhiji suggested, and I quote, "We must in the first place know enough about the human body." I especially like his view, I quote again, "The human body is the universe in miniature." His book is replete with suggestions on what to eat and how much to eat and all of that, and practical suggestions for us to take charge of our own health. Self-care, self-help group, and many of you, my Indian colleagues, would know this was very much part of his philosophy. But I should mention, this is not to mention that this is all to be left to the individual. I think we all agree here that the government has to be the prime mover, the main responsibility for health, and also has to invest much more in financial and human resources and technology, and must play a greater stewardship role. But we have seen time and again that implementation should be decentralized, as I gave you the example of TB, with local people playing a key role, as they know and understand their reality best, and in partnership, of course, with the health system. As I mentioned earlier, not knowing of this book, but somehow following Gandhiji's ideas of going to the people, we began our health literacy initiatives. It continues to be the main part of our primary healthcare work. We've also seen that equipped with new information and knowledge, there's a spring in the step of our health workers come health educators. They are respected and trusted in their communities for all they know and for their services in saving lives. Acknowledging their leadership, several of our health workers have even been asked to stand for election in the panchayat or nagar palikas. One such sister I want to introduce to you is Chanchi Ben, poor, Dalit, and disabled. When SEWA members chose her to be the health worker of her village, the men of the village were outraged, as were the upper castes. They said, "We won't take any services, any medicines from her hand." Chanchi Ben had hardly been to school. She was landless. But she worked hard and developed into a competent health worker. Soon, those who had opposed her as a health worker sought her out for help with medicines and also linkages with the local public health system. She was elected to the board of our health cooperative, and later her village leaders asked her to stand for election as Sarpanch, or village head person. She was the keynote speaker at a forum of corporate leaders in Mumbai. When I accompanied her, she told me that no one in her community had ever been on a plane. In fact, the headman of the village kept calling me and saying, "Mind you, take care of her, otherwise we'll take care of you." And she was surprised when she got a standing ovation from the corporate leaders as she described her journey to empowerment. The third lesson is that health and well-being can be achieved, at least in part, through solidarity created through women's collectives. Chanchiben and thousands of others in the movement only obtained voice, visibility, and validity through their own collective. Often our SEWA sisters say, who would know about us and our struggles? It's only through organizing, uniting, and building up our own organizations. And it's not only for visibility, it's also a practical way to reach services and entitlements to the poor. It's also much easier for government people to collaborate and work in partnership with these kind of collectives and in a transparent manner. Further, through collectives, women and other vulnerable sections of our society obtain strength and the encouragement they need to break barriers of gender, caste, and class, as Chanchiben did, and even alter power relations to some extent in the family and in their communities. They provide the opportunity, collectives do, for women to come together and not only learn, but also learn about gender relations and other injustices and discrimination in our society. And because this new knowledge is brought into the home by women, there's also a renewed respect within the home and in their communities. Of course, not always, but oftentimes. Next, we've learned that local people, especially women, adapt well to digital technology if internet and devices are put in their hands and if they obtain digital literacy and support. Recently, our health cooperative joined with a blockchain organization called Algorand, and women co-created an app which they call Digital Health Passport. So all their documents, which often get misplaced or burned in a fire or flood or something, they're digitized and then they're linked seamlessly to the government's DigiLockers. Still, there's a way to go. We now have to see from the DigiLocker how they can be seamlessly attached to the various schemes. Finally and importantly, the collective helps women address the social determinants of health, only one of which, as you all know, is the health system. Others, like livelihood and water and sanitation, in my experience, can only be addressed by action through collectives. When the woman is part of a group, she finds the strength and bargaining power she needs to address these difficult issues. In Shankar Bhuvan, my earliest experience with organizing for health and with collectives, we went as a group to the municipal corporation and to the elected municipal councillor. And we were able to convince him to invest in toilets for Shankar Bhuvan, so they didn't have to go to the riverbank anymore. Later, this became a sort of experiment and a model for another program that our municipal corporation developed called Parivartan. It's a program where local people living in informal settlements, the corporate sector, and the municipal corporation all joined hands, all invested, and provided 7 basic services, like a tap and toilet in every home, in not just Shankar Bhuvan, but in several informal settlements across Ahmedabad. And the total investment, for your information at that time, was just 22,000 rupees per household, and people contributed 2,000 rupees. As most of the women in the area in Shankar Bhuvan, as I told you, were street vendors, we also took up the issue of harassment by the police and the municipal authorities. As many of you know, they extract bribes from them, they evict them, and so on. It was a 40-year struggle, but we were able to put a case in the Supreme Court of India. And later, after a large campaign, with many others also, the Indian Parliament passed the first of its kind in the world, a law to protect street vendors' livelihoods in January of 2014. The Shankar Bhuvan sisters were ecstatic. At long last, the harassment and unnecessary payouts stopped almost entirely. The money saved could now be used for better food, education, health, and so on. And now we see that Shankar Bhuvan children, the next generation, are more educated and have good jobs, many of them, and so on. There are numerous such examples of breakthroughs, and I'm sure you all have a good stock of them. I was interested, Dr. Jha mentioned that policy work is unglamorous. I think unglamorous is one thing, but I think also you have to be a marathon runner, not a sprinter. 40 years here, 20 years here, that's how long things take. But opportunities come up if you're in a collective, and one which I was part of and many of you know was the Commission on Social Determinants of Health. When the commissioners and the entire commission visited the homes and neighborhoods of the women, listening to stories of struggle and resilience through their collectives, the commissioners said they obtained new insights that then found a place in the report, which all of you know well, and which is widely considered a milestone in public health, global public health. Of course, the women got a big boost from these visits when, senior erstwhile ministers of health were walking through the bazaar and markets with them. They got increasing respect. For all these reasons, then, I suggest that solidarity through women's collectives is the key to health. The road to solidarity in developing such collectives are full of challenges, ups and downs. We certainly have had our share of them. It's not, as I said, a walk in the park. But as our SEWA sisters tell us when our spirits falter, we have to keep on keeping on. Our country is full of divisions, hierarchies, and injustices and exploitation of all kinds. Yet solidarity is both possible and is seen across our country in numerous examples, not just SEWA, numerous, by local people. It is this solidarity that results in inclusion, deepening of democratic functioning and decision-making and participation, especially of those who are usually forgotten or excluded, like informal workers. When they feel they have both agency and knowledge, they feel empowered to act on all aspects of their lives, not least on their very health and well-being. Barriers and challenges notwithstanding, equipped with scientific information and with the strength of the collective, women and local people can take control over their bodies and their lives, and they can take us forward towards universal health care and towards a more just and equitable India. Thank you. Sorry, it was a bit long. I'm sorry it was a bit long, Tanya, but there's 50 years there.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for that. I think as you were speaking, questions kept arising in my mind, and then you kept answering them in the next part of your speech. So I think so much wonderful just sharing of your experiences. Just a few things quickly to look at. It felt almost like we knew some of those sisters, no? I think the way that you shared the experiences right from the women itself to some of the larger learnings, and also the engagement with policymakers. What a fantastic journey. We are out of time, but I think maybe we will take one or two, anyone who would like to share thoughts or quick comments. Remember that we're going into lunch, so you can, well, I shouldn't say it, but you should wait for her to finish her lunch and then find an appropriate time and catch her and interact with her. But if anyone would like, I have like many written up, as you can see, but yes. Okay. So just these two, quick, okay, that's 3 and that's 4. Okay, we've stopped at 4.
Yeah.
5, okay. Let's see how fast the questions can come in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And I wonder, I mean, I can explain this in greater length over lunch, but I wonder whether you would reflect a bit on the changing nature of civil society, of collectivism itself, and partly also the nature of financialization and wider corporatization that we see in health and in the wider society. How or what, any reflections on what this bears in the next decade of doing the similar kind of things that you have done? Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have the questions first, please?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. It's a great privilege for me to listen to you sitting a few feet away. I am Rajkumar and I work for Ekjut. I just want to ask one thing, sir. We have heard a lot about your work, learnt a lot from you. A few caution points, if you can suggest grassroots organizations going to work with women collectives. Because in this time where governments are investing a lot on self-help group through livelihood missions, and health and nutrition largely is unaddressed, and everybody wants to do something. So what are the few points we should take care by not doing or not repeating mistakes from your works? Thank you.
Big question.
We'll take one more, please.
Hello. Sorry. Look. It's okay, no? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. First of all, let me congratulate you for your very wonderful talk and raising an important issue of this women empowerment. One thing which I would like to have your reflections on it, over a period of experience while doing the research, field-based research activities and all that. So I learned that the women, they don't have much independence to have a decision making in their own family. So any thoughts about it, that when they're going to be more empowered? Because for buying something, for taking some decisions, like even getting going to the hospital facilities, so those kind of issues probably, when are we going to have those independence, decision making power?
There are another two hands here and then.
Oh gosh, but Arnav can grab me later.
So, okay, then we'll just take two more.
Yeah, and then you'll have to remind me because I didn't take notes.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
So, good morning, ma'am. I'm Meena from Institute of Public Health. So, Prashant asked me questions. I'm going to ask a different question to you. So, NRHM kind of emphasized more on the communitization agenda in its policies and programs. But I see that the communitization agenda has taken a back seat now in the policies and the implementation. So what should we do about it? What is your message for the government and other stakeholders who want to emphasize on community participation and engagement in governance spaces? Thank you.
And the last one.
First of all, thank you, ma'am. Being a young professional in public health, your talk actually was very inspiring, especially in terms of your experience and the work of SEWA. So you talked about organizing is often seen as a central to advancing community health. Now, in terms of your experience, how do we build collective action in floating informal settlements where transience, precarity and weak social ties make collectivization particularly very challenging?
So there are lots of questions and I don't want to come between people and lunch. So I'll be brief and you'll forgive me and you can buttonhole me later. I think I'll start with the last one because it's fresh in my mind. Maybe we can go backwards. I think now we have digital tools. It's much easier to track. What we found, even like I was mentioning about TB, the way they track is they have WhatsApp numbers, they via WhatsApp and other digital tools, they go house to house and all. These are not easy questions. It is hard. I mean, we also lose a lot of people we are in touch with because they go back to their, home village or something in another state far away. For example, we work a lot in Surat, and Surat is a net receiver city of migrants from several eastern Indian states. But they come back, and also someone or the other, if you're consistently there, if you have, as I said, Agewans, local women leaders, and local leaders from those communities, we are able to generally track them. And also, we sit with them, we find out what are ways that we can keep in touch with them. One of the big issues that migrant workers face, certainly we see this in Surat, is the whole portability issue. All these schemes are supposed to be portable, but in practice there are lots of issues. Because if you have a ration card from Bihar, then the person in Surat says, why should you must have taken rations from there, why should I give you here? Lots of, micro issues. But I think thanks to digitalization, coupled with a strong base on the ground, we are able to track people and keep in touch with them. So thank you for that. Then the question from, yeah. So I think good ideas don't go away, and it connects to what Prashant asked. We all know it's not just in India, but all over the world. What shall I say? The atmosphere for civil society isn't exactly what it was, say, in the 70s or 80s, to put it mildly. But, you know, we have to keep on going on. As I said, good ideas don't go away. We keep working with government. We find that, first of all, I want to say you can't make blanket statements, because many states, I'm thinking of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, even what I saw recently in Bihar when I was in Gaya and Katihar district, some of the poorest districts of India, local authorities understand. They're ready to join hands and work. Sometimes they say, don't put anything in writing, please, because we'll get into trouble. But, you know, they want to join hands, they want to work, because they understand that this task is too much for anyone, for any government to do. So it depends. You have to build the rapport, you have to build the trust, you know, health outcomes and actual action and workable things on the ground, prove yourself and credibility. Yourself meaning the organization, that you're serious. And I mean, we haven't found, to be honest with you, that many difficulties. We just keep our nose to the ground, eyes and ears and nose to the ground, and keep working. And don't make a big song and dance, because in some states it's more difficult, including mine, I'm sorry to say, to work as part of civil society. But there are many spaces which you can find. There's this space. We also have different spaces like working with NIH, and through them, ICMR body, then we work more with our government there. So it depends. We have not found big barriers, to be honest. And that links to Prashant's question. I mean, we live in times, I mean, they're always, we're not impervious to external environments. So, as I said, you have to find ways and spaces. And you know, even with the Lancet Commission, you know, that you were also part of, and many others in this room, perhaps in one way or the other. You know, it wasn't very easy. Some of the things we said didn't find resonance with our government, and some did. That's how it is. But, you know, if we have evidence, which we had from 50,000 households across the country, if you have the evidence, of course, I want to say here, by the way, my experience shows that evidence alone doesn't do the trick. Evidence is important, scientific evidence that all of you are generating. But the thing that works most is this, you know, touching hearts and minds. Like when I told you, when you take the commissioners to meet people in informal settlements or villages, you don't have to explain anymore. They understand that people-to-people connect is really important. And policymakers often say, we don't get this chance anymore. They're sitting in their offices with so much admin work. Who can blame them? But so I think, I don't know if I've answered your question properly, Prashant. There's a lot of issues involved, and the corporatization is an issue. Let me give you one quick example. We work in a tribal district, 100% Adivasi district of South Gujarat called Tapi. It's a tiny little district with 3-4 tribal Adivasi communities. Very good referral hospital, CHC, running over there, doing well. Women had good connects with them, and our Agivans had good connects. Suddenly we found that the hospital is being handed over to the Torrent company, the pharmaceutical company based in our state, Gujarat. But we didn't have to do much. The tribal people, the Adivasis organized, they went on dharnas, they sat there. For 1 year they fought off, and they succeeded. So, not always do you succeed, but again, this is coming back to the collective and mobilizing and so on and so forth. They said this hospital is running perfectly well. We don't need a corporate to come and take over. So there are these kinds of examples also, where people act together. Last question?
No, unfortunately,
Oh, sorry.
also out of time.
Yeah.
We do have 2 more questions, but maybe
No, I didn't answer Dr. Anshu's, if I may, in 30 seconds. Yeah.
Independence, women don't have the independence.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And it continues. I didn't mean to suggest that because you're in a cooperative and because you're in a more decision-making role, everything is sorted. It's a process. It's a process of social change. So it takes time, but at least they find some strength when they're in a group. And I think also what we find is that when the men in the family find something useful going on, like when their mortgage lands are reclaimed because of SEWA Bank, or because if a child is saved because of timely health action, then they're more amenable to listening, quite frankly. But it takes time. It takes generations to change 5,000 years of patriarchy.
There was also someone asking for the caution points for women's collective.
Yeah, that I think I know Rajkumar well, and we work with them well in IPH. We have enormous respect for your organization. So maybe I can take that later, because that's a very big question. And we are not into magic bullets over here. I mean, my quick answer would be we go to people and ask them what are their priorities and what kinds of action. Because sitting in Gujarat, we would not like to suggest what tribal women in Jharkhand would see as their priorities. You would know much better, but we can speak about it.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking the time, and apologies to the organizers. I know we squeezed that in somehow. I would like to invite, I would like to invite Sundari Ravindran and Ketki, our governing board member. You've met her in the morning already, Sundari Ravindran, and Ketki is our the spinal cord of this entire event, who has brought together the three organizations and is still doing her PhD, right? So,
I've known Sundari for more than 40 years.
please stand. With that, thank you again, ma'am, for your time and for sharing so much of your life and journey with us. We will all now move to the back of this auditorium for the group photo, after which we will head to the MDC hall for lunch. So I request everyone to please make your way to the exit at the back, and that is where we will head for the group photograph.
Please use the exit to your right.